My name is Chris Bombardier. I'm the executive director of an organization called Save One Life, and I also have a medical condition called severe hemophilia B. My first trip to Nepal was in 2017, and it was to climb Mount Everest, which was exciting.
Wow, that's great. So this is the second time?
Yeah, this is the second trip to Nepal. Yeah, I was diagnosed with hemophilia when I was born. I had a family history of the condition. So my mother had two uncles with the condition, and it's genetic. So it's passed down from parents to kids, and it primarily affects boys. So when I was born, my mom knew that I should be tested, and I was found to have hemophilia. I do have an older brother who does not have hemophilia. My family's been wonderful supporting me with my hemophilia. As far as my friends, I didn't really tell them when I was younger. I kind of didn't want them to know about my condition because I didn't want them to think of me differently or treat me differently. So I was kind of, I would guess you would say, ashamed of having the condition. It wasn't until I got older that I realized that it was just a part of who I was and that I shouldn't be ashamed of. I did disclose it when I was like 8 or 9 years old the first time to some friends, and I felt like they treated me differently, so then I never did it again until I was in university and I was living away from home. That was the first time I started being more open about my hemophilia. Yeah, when I was young, it was harder to hide that I had a medical condition because I would get injured and have to, sit, use crutches for a day or sit out of gym class. And so some people knew that there was something different about me. But then I would maybe come back the next day not using crutches, and they would call me and say I was faking being injured, or they would call me a bleeder, which is, they were just kind of teasing me. And then some kids also felt like they couldn't play the same way with me because they thought I was kind of fragile, and it didn't make me feel very good. I dealt with it when I was younger by just ignoring, not ignoring, but just not being as open about my condition. And then as I got older, I just became more confident about talking about it and making sure people knew that it didn't mean I was any less than them, that I could still be a normal person. And so it took me a while to gain that confidence in myself. And it wasn't really until I met other people with the same condition that helped give me that confidence and not feel so alone. No, I don't feel inferior anymore at all. I actually kind of look at my hemophilia as a strength because I've had to endure a lot of challenges from that condition, a lot of pain, and I think it's made me more resilient and able to kind of overcome some challenges. I actually think it helped me a lot climbing Mount Everest, being able to be in uncomfortable situations for a long period of time. That's something I learned as a kid with hemophilia, so I think it's really become a strength of mine, actually, and I'm proud of what I've been able to accomplish with my condition. So one of the main signs of hemophilia is bleeding into joints, so into your joint spaces, so knees, elbows, ankles are really common. And then you can also get easy bruising. So a lot of people think of hemophilia as like you'll get a paper cut and you'll just keep you'll bleed forever. And while that's slightly true, that's not the whole story. It's really the internal bleeding that's most dangerous. So for example, here in Nepal, where people haven't had as equal access to treatment, they have repeated bleeding into maybe their knee, and after many of those episodes, it will become very swollen and won't bend anymore, so it becomes a really debilitating condition. Yeah, so in the United States and many other developed countries, we have access to medication that you can take. It's called prophylactically. So you're taking it on a regular schedule to help prevent bleeding. And so when I was climbing the mountains, I was just having to take my medicine while on the mountain, which was challenging in itself because you have to find a vein and do an intravenous infusion. So essentially sticking a needle into your vein. So that was pretty challenging in the cold conditions on the mountain. And then just learning how to transport my medicine so that it didn't freeze was also challenging. Yeah, so I started climbing mountains because I've always been a very physically active person. That's a place that I feel I get a lot of enjoyment is from climbing. And I had an opportunity to travel to Africa in 2011 and work on a hemophilia treatment center there. That was my first international trip. And on that trip, I realized Mount Kilimanjaro was very close. And so I was like, I'm going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro. But on that trip, what was the more powerful...
When did you climb that mountain?
I climbed Kilimanjaro in 2011. And on that trip, I thought that the mountain would be the really life-changing experience, but it was actually traveling to Kenya to the hospital and seeing what hemophilia looked like without the same access to care that I've had. So while I was climbing Kilimanjaro, I had a lot of mixed emotions. I felt very proud of being able to climb it. I loved being on the mountain, but I also felt guilty that I was able to do the climb and people living so closely to the mountain were just struggling to live with the same condition. And so I decided that if I'm going to keep climbing mountains and achieve the dream of climbing the 7 summits, which is the highest mountain on each continent, that I wanted to do it for something bigger than just myself. And so I dedicated my life to climbing and bringing awareness to hemophilia around the world where people don't have access to care, and hopefully trying to change that. Yeah, when I was climbing, I think what I really wanted to convey to other people with hemophilia is, with good access to care, you can have big dreams and achieve them. I know that climbing mountains is not everybody's idea of fun. I mean, I think a lot of people would never think of climbing Mount Everest. But just to think about any kind of dream and not have your bleeding disorder be an excuse not to try and achieve it. So I think that was a big part of my goal, was to kind of share that message. And then in the broader context, try and encourage people to think about equitable access to medical services around the world. Experience. We get to meet some of them again on this trip, which was wonderful to see them doing so well. But part of the reason, we actually made a documentary about the climb of Everest was because, everybody's heard of Mount Everest. It's the tallest mountain in the world. And I thought it was a really great opportunity to show that, with proper access, you can climb a mountain, but the people that live around the mountain in the same country that it exists don't have that same access. So I thought it was a really powerful message to show that, and to enlighten hopefully people in the United States and other places about this, disparity in care around the world. In Nepal, I think the message, is that there is some medication available here, and it's really important whenever they're feeling bleeding happening to come and receive the medicine. I think sometimes there's a lot of difficulty to get to the hospital and the expense to get here, and they end up with a lot of damaged joints. So it's making sure you receive the treatment that you need as frequently as possible. But I also think that I want to encourage them to still have dreams and goals, and not to think that because they have hemophilia, it means they can't reach those goals. It might mean that they have to change how they approach them, but they're definitely still possible. And it's amazing, just since 2017 to today, there's been a lot of change in this hemophilia community here. They're very strong. They have a very wonderful organization that's making a big difference in patients' lives, and I'm excited to see that continue to grow, because it's only been 6 years and it's a very profound change, which is wonderful to see. That's been one of my biggest worries, actually. So the people that are donating the medicine are actually the pharmaceutical companies that are making it. And it's been wonderful that they've made this commitment and have been donating this medication. But like you said, there's no guarantee that it lasts forever. But I think a lot of the responsibility on ensuring better access to treatment comes from organizations like Save One Life and some of the other global organizations to keep reminding these pharmaceutical companies that providing access to everybody is important. Whether it's, finding different ways to finance it or pay for it or providing discounts to countries, like we need to always be working to make sure that access to care never goes backwards, because patients all over the world deserve this access to this care, because with that access they get to lead normal lives. So I think a lot of that responsibility, lies on our whole entire global community to remain united in our voice and to keep advocating for that continued access to care. So in the upcoming days, we're going to do a big celebration tomorrow for World Hemophilia Day, which is very exciting, meeting with the whole community here in Nepal. And then we're doing a screening of the documentary for the first time in Nepal in the afternoon. And then on Tuesday, we're flying to trek to Everest Base Camp. So we have 7 trekkers that are coming with me up to Everest Base Camp. All of the trekkers have been raising money to help support Save One Life and also our partners here in Nepal, which is amazing. So I'm excited to get to share the Khumbu Valley with these trekkers and see one of the most beautiful places I've ever seen in my life with more people, which is really cool. I'm very, very excited to get to kind of share that experience with them. It can be even more frequently than that. We visited a home yesterday that a young boy would have to come to the hospital 3 to 4 times a week for bleeding episodes, which is extremely difficult, not only for the child suffering from those bleeding episodes, but also the parents that have to take off work to bring their child to the hospital for care as well. So it's extremely difficult. But I would say most people with hemophilia would have to come at least a few times a month for treatment to treat bleeding. This is my job, with Save One Life, which is great. Yeah, I love it. It's excellent. And then I also have a new son at home, so being a parent is a new adventure for me.
You're married?
I'm married, yes, and wife and a 2-year-old son. Yes.
Nepalkhabar.com